All right. Hello, everybody. This is Allie with the Perception Trainers, author of the Perception Diet. And today I have a super special guest with me, Mr. Chris Kendall. So, Chris Kendall, if you don't already know about
Oh,
him,
maybe I like it raw.
oh, yeah, he likes it raw. Okay, so Chris Kendall is of the rawadvantage.com, and he is a registered holistic nutritionist who was certified by the Canadian School of National Nutrition in Canada, and he works as a 100% raw foods lifestyle coach. And it is through his videos, through his recipe books, through attending festivals and attending retreats and of course his one-on-one sessions that he guides people through a very realistic, approachable, loving way of approaching a raw foods lifestyle. And with the reason that I wanted to have Chris on today was because not only has he had a profound physical transformation through his raw foods lifestyle, he's had many spiritual awakenings and consciousness awakenings. And I really wanted to bring him on today so that he could kind of explore deeper the, the spiritual aspects of this journey that he's taken with raw foods and how this has affected his consciousness. So, welcome, Chris. Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Stoked to be here. A little tired. Just woke up and I'm feeling great.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, I'm in Indonesia and Chris is in Saskatchewan in Canada, so we have a 14-hour time difference. So kind of, yeah, figuring out a time that both of us were going to be awake was a challenge, but we did it.
Stoked to work out. Absolutely stoked to work out.
Yeah, totally. Me too. Okay, so let's get into your story a little bit. So how did all this raw foods lifestyle kind of come into your reality in the beginning? Just so that people can kind of have some context of how this story all began for you.
Awesome. Well, it all started because I was a skateboarder, to be honest. And I've been skateboarding since I was 5 years old. I'm 36 now. And by the time I was 18, 19, I was kind of a party animal. All I wanted to do was drink and skate, smoke weed, do the party lifestyle, all that kind of stuff. I was eating fast food all day, basically every day. I remember the skate shop I worked for had a deal with the local pizza place where we could get an extra large pizza for $7. So that's what I ate for lunch and dinner, basically every day. Bacon double cheeseburger pizzas. And
Wow.
it wasn't too long until I started feeling really crappy. Like I went from being a really boisterous, go-lucky, always happy, feeling great guy to feeling, depressed and joint pains and just kind of mental anguish a lot of the time. Part of that mental anguish was because I wasn't skateboarding at the level I was before. I was living that party lifestyle. I wasn't recovering as well. But part of it was also because I was just filled with crap, so my mind and thoughts were crap as well. And I knew I needed something, so I actually found yoga first. And yoga woke me up to mindfulness, to really deep breath work, and to treating my body like a temple. And it taught me about vegetarianism, kind of got me into the spirit of karma. And I started really researching a whole lot, and one of the first books that I found on nutrition, and it's funny because before that I didn't really see food and how I felt as like a strong connection. I don't know how, like I just thought like,
Right.
a liter of ice cream and a lot of pizza pops did a body and mind good, but I read some books and I realized, what, that doesn't really equate, and I started reading books. I read Diet for New America by John Robbins, which was really eye-opening and spirit-provoking. And then I found a book called Fit for Life. And it was one of those books, and it was one of those moments where I went into a bookstore. I knew I was looking for health, but I didn't know what I was looking for. And it seriously, like, it was the only book in the bookstore. It glowed. It hit me in the head. I knew that was the book I was going home with. And when I read it, it shook me. Like, it changed my life forever. Like, there's precepts in that book, like food combining, eating fruit for breakfast, vegetarianism, that now 17, 18 years later, I still use to a T, and that book really set me on the path, because it did talk about raw food. It did talk about veganism, but the food combining and eating fruit for breakfast were the things that struck me right off, and that's something I took on 100%. And it was about a I guess more like a 4.5 year journey from there to the point where I met Doug Graham, the author of the 80-10-10 diet. And at that point, when I met Doug, I just decided to throw it all in and go all raw, and I don't know, it was a crazy journey between then, because most of it was really just to improve my skateboarding. But when I met Doug and got into raw food, it changed and altered my course, my life path, because it meant more than just improving my skateboarding. It kind of became what I saw as my destiny, or as my career path, or as my calling.
Right. Amazing. So when you met Doug and you had that kind of moment of like, this is what I want to do with my life, how did that kind of culminate into the real world implications of what you decided to do next? Like, what did that look like? Did you kind of register for school right away, or like, how did that kind of unfold?
Well, the amazing thing was, when I met Doug, I was already 6 months into my schooling at CSNN, and I wanted to become a chef. Yeah, like I wanted to become a chef because I was always interested in making food, but I couldn't find any vegan or raw food style chef schools that were locale or within my budget or reality, And so I went to CSNN as kind of a secondary passion, nutrition. And when I met Doug, it was at a Taste of Health, a vegan festival. And still, like I said, I was really just doing it to improve my skateboarding game, to feel better, to heal faster, so I could throw myself downstairs and continue skateboarding and stuff like that. But when I met Doug and went raw, it was within those first 24 hours, literally within those first 24 hours, that I was hit with a Satori moment. I was just hit with by spirit, essentially, really, where I knew that what I wanted to do was spread what I was feeling to others. Like, it was really just a heart opening experience. That's really what it was. And I think part of it was, of course, because I felt my destiny, or I felt my passion, I felt my calling unfold before my eyes, or before my heart, I guess, and it was just kind of a strange awakening where I literally just felt like, this is what I'm here for. This is what I want to spread. Like, I remember walking down the street with tears in my eyes, just feeling so grateful. And like, I mean, I'd felt good, I'd felt grateful before, but it was an overwhelming sense of gratitude, where I was seeing people as love. I was seeing people as spirit. I was seeing people as, just no difference between myself, more so than I ever had experienced in my life. And it just, like I said, it just kind of shook me, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to spread this. And, here I am 13 years later,
Yeah, absolutely. So you were already into yoga. You had already kind of started opening your mind and opening your heart and opening your body to these kinds of practices. And then, as you said, you were kind of moving in the direction of healthy eating and fruit for breakfast and food combining and making things simple. And and really, we could probably look at that and say, you were freeing up a lot of nervous energy within your body.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, the difference between the cooked food, junk food, drugs, party lifestyle, and the whole foods, raw foods, pure, or food combined with these spiritual practices, which I want to get into a little bit more detail from you about your yoga practices. You were awakening this. You were freeing up so much nervous energy, right? And so this heart and this heart opening that you were experiencing was absolutely, probably we could say, facilitated by the habits that you were ingraining into your lifestyle. So I'm interested to know, what style of yoga were you practicing, and how was that affecting you before raw foods, and how did that affect you after raw foods?
Awesome question. Well, I mean, when I first got into yoga, it was through power yoga. Admittedly, I found
Yeah.
A Robert Yee intermediate power yoga VHS tape at
Totally.
Walmart. At Walmart, and
Oh man.
yeah, and I just took it on. Like I was just doing it all the time, and a lot of my past and present has been self teaching, or just taking something and bringing it home and reading it and studying it, So that was the same with yoga. I used that Robert E. VHS tape every day for months until the point where I had a home practice. And then I just kind of sponged up whatever I found around me, going to bookstores and just looking at stuff. I was always pretty broke, so I didn't buy a lot of things, hence buying the VHS tape at Walmart. And
Yeah.
and I went to a few yoga classes, but around the time that I was in school, which is again like 4 years later, and transforming from junk food eating to basically a high raw vegan. Um,
Hmm.
I started going to a kundalini yoga studio, and really the reason why I went to the kundalini yoga studio in the first place was that it was free if you went at 3:30 a.m. That was the
Okay.
the time the devotees went, and it was really interesting because I'd be in my cut-off jean shorts skateboarding. It was on the bottom of a hill in Vancouver, Canada. So I'd be bombing this hill on my skateboard, power sliding around, and like tired as hell. And I'd arrive at the yoga studio, and everyone's in all white with their headdresses and their bindis, and like dead stone faced, like the not looking at anything kind of look, And I'd be showing up with my skateboard and rocking it in there, getting ready for my yoga class, and they were on a total different wavelength, and it made an impression on me. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Um, I enjoyed it a lot, and I went as often as I could, which sometimes is a few times a week, and sometimes is once a week for about 3 or 4 months. And I think that probably had the biggest influence on my yoga path, to be honest. Today and since then, really what I practice the most is basically a form of kundalini. Um, I've studied a lot of different styles of yoga. I've had yoga teachers since then as roommates. Some that breath work was as big of a deal to them as raw food was to me.
Right.
And, I mean, I love all styles, absolutely, but I think kundalini has been probably my strongest foundational style of yoga.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, and this is really awesome, and I want to kind of explore this a little bit because for anyone that doesn't know who's watching this, there is quite a difference between um, kind of traditional hatha yoga and kundalini yoga. That
Yeah,
mostly what we think of as yoga, especially in the West, is the hatha asana, right? So when you talk about the
yeah,
Rodney Yee DVD, that was
yes,
that's a
exactly.
hatha asana, right? And when you
Yeah,
go to power yoga, you're going to a hatha yoga class. Like it's all pretty much under this umbrella of
absolutely.
this Krishnacharya lineage of hatha yoga, and it's these postures that are designed to awaken the body and to stretch and strengthen you so that you can sit longer in meditation. Kundalini yoga is different. It's not it's very much focused on the awakening of the internal column, right, of energy that runs
Yeah.
from the base of the spine to the crown of the head, and it's really focused on awakening the self. It's very focused on self love, if I'm
Hmm.
correct on that. Yogi
Yeah.
Bhajan was one of the more kind of, I think, founding fathers of the self-love movement that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And this style of yoga is it's very much kind of almost, you could say, a bit more of a direct path in their focus
Mhm.
of awakening. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like an energetic awareness form of yoga, which his entire intent is to
Right.
move the perception point and to raise the energy or the kundalini energy that is latent in
Yeah.
us, right? Whereas, as you said, the other yogas are more a preparation, whereas kundalini is like an active form of awakening.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, and I think that that's a really good way to put it. That, like, the traditional hatha yoga is designed to be a preparation for this meditation, right? And
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
meditation is where that awakening is meant to happen. Whereas in
Yeah,
Kundalini yoga, it's almost like they're combining the two, right? They're making the asana the meditation and the breath work
absolutely.
all in to have this kind of like accelerated awakening experience.
Absolutely. I mean, it's wild because, I do teach what I consider a light form of Kundalini. I call it Kendalini with my last name, Kendall, because it
Yeah,
is a light form and it is an introduction.
yeah,
Like, official Kundalini yoga comes with scripture and chanting and, much more intensive. It's a very intensive practice. Like you can be
it is.
screaming in your mind, like it can be really intense as you get used to the postures and to let go, and um,
Yes.
in the Kendalini version there isn't as much intensity or chanting. It's more of an energy shifting awareness practice, which I think that's what's one of the most powerful aspects of Kundalini is moving your attention point. It's like there's these vigorous postures and there's the breath work and there's the focus and there's the chanting, but all of them are set to raise your vibration or to place your vibration in the different chakra points. And through the breath work and through the postures, it makes it much easier to raise the heat or raise the energy in those centers, so it makes it easier for you to basically move your attention point.
Right. Right. Perfect. And so, through this kind of process of practicing this yoga, did you face kind of your inner demons or your inner shadow or whatever you kind of want to call it at a kind of accelerated rate because of this energetic work that you were doing? Did you notice that at
Well,
all?
it's really hard to say because, when I really first got into the Kundalini, it was the same time where I was really getting into the raw food.
Right.
And before that, I was, definitely on an awakening self-love journey and moving my attention to the dark corners and the shadow self, as you say, or the cobwebs within myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so often I think that, the raw food is essentially just putting sunshine inside yourself, putting a bright light inside yourself and awakening up or, shining light on those corners, bringing the cobwebs up. So
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to say. I mean, I definitely think that the Kundalini as well as the raw food in the beginning points had a huge impact on my journey into spirituality and into self-knowledge and self-knowing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but which it was, what was more profound is really hard to say because they were intertwined, So
Right.
um, both have been an unfolding process since then. But I think both of them have been intertwined, and both of them a huge part of my journey.
Right. And maybe, this is me just kind of theorizing, but it could be that the combination of the raw foods and the specific style of yoga that you were doing was actually quite a profound mix. Because as you say, with the raw
Absolutely.
foods, you're kind of like bringing that sunshine into the body. You're shining a light on those cobweb shadowed areas, and then through your yoga, you're moving that energy, right? So rather than
Absolutely.
it being stagnant or stuck or getting trapped in places, which I think, this is like how we could kind of translate that in the real world. Is like, there are a lot of people that when they first go on a raw foods diet or when they're on a raw foods diet, even for an extended period of time, is they feel a lot of emotion and they feel a
Oh yeah.
lot of stuff come up and they don't have an outlet for processing that, right? For really getting into that energy, because again, like this, the whole foods and the raw foods are freeing up that nervous energy. You're not being numbed
Mhm.
out by your food. You're not being suppressed and depressed by what you're taking in.
Absolutely.
So when we have these kind of wounded or shadowed aspects, they're not being placated the way they were before with the raw foods, right? So it's like almost like the raw food brings it to life, and then the
Absolutely.
yoga or the other energetic practices are what help you process through. Would you agree with that? Maybe
A
that
hundred
was kind of
percent.
what was happening.
No. Yeah. No. I think that's absolutely accurate. I mean, between that and just the reality that when you're freeing up so much nervous energy, you have so much more physical energy. And so I was moving a lot, and all of those things just are a huge, huge release in energy, as well as stirring up physically, mentally, spiritually, because you're basically forcing what was down up in the surface, right? So
Yeah.
as you said, emotions come up, everything comes up, but the Kundalini was definitely a way to process, or a way to move, or to more comfortably situate and experience that energy.
Right. And I think that that's like a really powerful and profound thing to offer people, kind of anyone who's listening to this. If you're pursuing a raw foods diet, and you're pursuing, or just eating a whole foods diet in general, that just to kind of know that it's normal if you feel these emotions
Oh
surface
man,
and the intensity, right? And that
absolutely.
to kind of allow yourself to explore some of these other energetic tools, like Chris did, to help you move through and process through those emotions, rather than allowing them to just come up and feel like you have no real way of dealing with them, right? Because I think there's a reason that we numb out. There's a reason that we were eating the way we were eating before. There's a reason we were stuffing it down, because we didn't feel like we could handle it, right? We don't
Yeah,
feel like we have the. So then when we go onto this way of eating that allows for all this nervous energy to be freed up and all these emotions to come to the surface, if we don't have tools, we're going to run right back, right? And we're
absolutely.
going to be, right?
Yeah, that's what I find is, one of the three biggest reasons why people have a hard time with the raw food diet is they're not equipped. Their coping mechanisms are outdated. They're used to grounding with cooked foods, or with,
Right.
heavy foods. And when you lose that pacification, or you lose that coping mechanism,
Yeah.
you're kind of out of luck, So you got to develop other means, absolutely. And yoga, breath work, meditation, sport, nature, hot
Yeah.
baths. All these things are absolute necessities in order to find your balance within a
Right.
new paradigm you find yourself in.
Right. And I think that that's a really important thing that you're bringing up here, is that like this is really truly not just about just changing your diet and losing weight and getting clear skin or whatever, right? That
Yeah.
it truly is a massive shift
Mhm.
in your energy, in your consciousness, in your awareness, in what you're capable of being aware of. And so, as Chris is talking about here, like as you're talking about, these other methods of supporting yourself are so foundational, and I
Absolutely.
think not talked about enough, right? Like
I totally agree. I totally agree. I mean, a lot of people enter this arena. They find themselves into a raw food diet and are ill-equipped. They weren't told what to expect, or it's not out there enough. So all of a sudden they find themselves battling their demons, and they just thought they were just gonna eat some bananas and apples and feel great, And all of a
right,
sudden they're on
right,
a spiritual awakening, and they're not prepared for it. Maybe it's not even what they wanted, So
right,
it's
right.
I think it's a very important aspect to bring up and to share.
Right. Perfect. And so, and I know that you kind of already mentioned some tools, but maybe if you could go a little bit deeper into, like, if someone's coming to you and they're like, Chris, I'm on this raw food diet, and all these emotions are coming up, and I'm feeling like I'm on this kind of spiritual awakening path that I didn't know was going to happen. What do I do?
Mhm.
Like, how do I support myself? What are kind of some of your suggestions, maybe like a little bit more expanded upon, that you kind of like to offer people?
Number one is gratitude, just present moment awareness and gratitude. Seeing it as such a gift to have things come up, seeing it as the hugest opportunity that you're allowing things to move through you. Things that were trapped inside you that you didn't acknowledge, that you didn't accept, instead of having them bottled up and pushed down, they're finally coming to light. They're coming to awareness. That's all it is. It's an awakening
Right.
that you have this energy trapped within yourself. And that's a reason for celebration. So when you're in that deep despair, or in that deep anguish, or in that suffering, to see that as the best gift you've ever given yourself, and to breathe through it, to move through it, to sip water through it, whatever means, to shout through it, to scream through it, to shake through it,
Yeah.
whatever it takes, to punch, if you have a punching bag, but just to allow yourself to experience and to, manifest that energy in whatever way feels the most comfortable for you, so that you can let it go, because way too often, and in most people's cycle, they experience such hardship, such suffering, and they pacify. They use their old coping mechanisms, they use their food, they use drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be, and they push it right back down, and it just festers and gets louder and worse and worse. So gratitude is number one, just that shift, because again, so often we have detoxification, or we have, whatever it is, suffering in our life, and we see that as something bad, as something to bear, something to, like feel crappy and sorry about. But if instead we shift it to gratitude, into that real gift of presence, then, not only does it become easier, but it becomes the gift that it truly is.
Right. And I think that is so beautiful, and another kind of reason that I really wanted to have Chris on, because we share that perspective exactly. That yes. All of life is here to bless us. That there is absolutely nothing outside of God. Your detoxification symptoms, your anger, your fear, your frustration, that anguish, all of that is still God. You're not going to get rid of it. It's not going anywhere. It's coming up to be transmuted. It's coming up to be loved. It's coming up to be seen. And it's this practice of you really refocusing yourself from a victim, or someone that this is happening to, or that life can be against you, to like really seeing yourself as creator, right? As one with creation, and that this is all one big orchestration that you're playing a part in, and all of it is here for you, right?
Absolutely. It's all a part of perfection, and part of that is ownership and acceptance of what you've created in the past. It's like, yeah, I created that, and that's why this is coming up now, and I love myself more now because I'm aware of it, and I'm allowing myself to experience and let go of it, instead of just, continuing to compile it, right? So I think it can be a very difficult acceptance, but as Buddha said, all the world is suffering, and it's through acceptance of it that we transcend the suffering. And I think that is one of the most profound truths around. I used to laugh at that and think it was foolish, but now I really see that there is a divine truth there. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the messages that I hear you saying here, that I also talk about a lot too, is this accepting of responsibility is not accepting blame, right? That there's a very big difference between, okay, right, I made those choices in the past based on what I knew, and based on where I was at, and based on what was happening. And that doesn't mean that I was wrong before. And it doesn't mean that accepting responsibility for my part in that means that I'm this terrible, horrible, irreparably damaged being. It just means that I'm on a journey, and that this all is just an unfolding. And that as we accept ourselves, and as we accept our circumstances, and as we accept all these things we think we cannot accept, number one thing is they stop being so painful, right? So much of the suffering that we're going through is not really because of the thing itself, but it's because of all the things we're making the thing need, right?
Yes, our rejection of it, our judgment of it, and as soon as we let go of that, all of a sudden, it all was like a perfect Plinko that found us in the exact right slot we need to be right now for awareness to grow, for our love to blossom, and our gratitude to really take root. So
right. And really just seeing that this is all just a big game of of expansion, awareness expansion, right? That there is nothing missing from you. There's nothing wrong with you. You learning, growing, and changing is not evidence of having been wrong or bad before, right? It's just evidence that this is an evolutionary path that you're on.
Yeah, your energy awareness is just getting bigger. It's like those little teeny shell games where you have the little guy inside the little guy inside the little guy until there is no guy. It's just everything, right? So I think it is just a continual expanding process and awareness that never ends. I mean, from this life until we pass it, that process is only going to continue until we choose to maybe bottle ourselves back up again, you know?
Right. Exactly. And so what I think I hear you saying here is that a huge part of this for you was opening up to the idea that it's never going to be done, that you're going to keep growing and learning and expanding, and that none of it means that there's anything wrong with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's funny, like you said before, I hold yearly retreats, and I'm not like a, write it out, plan it out type of person. I'll admit, I'm just kind of a fly by the moment and by intuition and what speaks through me kind of person. And I remember one year, my mantra for the retreat, and it just came up like a few days before the retreat, was I can't fuck up, and that was basically the mantra for everyone for the retreat, was like, you're absolutely perfect as is, and no matter what you choose to do, think, or say, it's just a part of your awakening. And the more you own it as perfection, the more you own it as, this is what exactly I want to express myself as right now, the more clear and ease you're going to, clarity and ease you're going to experience in your right now, in your present awareness, which just makes you, I guess, a more clear, open conduit for the life energy.
Absolutely. And that's exactly it, right? Like, you allowed yourself to go into a state of allowing, which is that state of expansion, which is a state of love, right? That's what I believe love really is. It's simply that allowing of that expansion, right? And it's interesting that you say that, and that it's interesting that was the words that came to you, because I remember I actually had an experience in 2014. I was in meditation, and I heard a voice in my head say, okay, do you want to hear the most profound truth that exists on the planet Earth right now? And I was like, yes, of course. Tell me the most profound truth that exists on the planet Earth right now. And they're like, okay, you ready? And I was like, yeah. And then it was like, none of it's a fuck up. Yeah. And that was the most profound truth. And so I was just like, oh, okay. Right?
Well, I mean, the 100 monkey theory, it's kind of funny, because I believe it was 2014 that I had that retreat where that was my message and what I was sharing as well. It's kind of perfect as is, right?
Crazy. That's amazing. For sure. And so, like, and this is the kind of, like, very interesting thing too. Like, I think something that we just kind of tapped into there is just, right, how we are all so connected. It's all just one big thing, right? Like, Chris and I didn't know each other. We were thousands of miles apart, probably having the exact same experience at the exact same time.
Yeah, absolutely. As is.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit more about you taking that personal responsibility for yourself, because I feel like that is something that a lot of people really struggle with. So how did you bridge the gap between, like, this taking of responsibility for your life and this seeing your shadow come up and seeing the pain and all of this, and not making it mean that you were wrong and bad and stupid, and that you were accepting blame and having that be like a shameful thing, but have it be an empowering thing?
Well, I mean, for me, it was a gradual process. And by gradual, I don't necessarily mean like a slow angle, but it was more in kind of steps, because I really came afterward to recognize that a lot of my mental anguish was with myself identifying with what I was doing rather than what I was, I saw myself as a skateboarder, and when I saw myself as a good skateboarder, I was good, and I was loving of myself, and I was really happy, and everything was hunky-dory. But when I wasn't a good skateboarder, when that wasn't, secure in my life, I hated existence. I hated myself. I wasn't really happy with anything, like a rainbow seemed lackluster, if I wasn't skateboarding well, right? So the thing that really happened, I guess, when I got into raw food, my everyday state became less self-identified with what I was doing, and more with, I guess, what I was experiencing in between those moments, because before that, like, I thought, like, if I wasn't skateboarding, what was my point in existing? Like, that was really my mindset, but I got into this, and I still love skateboarding, But like I said, in that first 24 hours, my heart exploded, and I was like, skateboarding is a toy. Skateboarding is a fun way to pass the time, a fun way to express myself, and possibly a very integral way for me to share this message of health, of self-love, of embetterment, of awareness, you know? And my everyday state went from, you know, like kind of, you know, humdrum waiting to be skateboarding or hoping to be skateboarding well to gratitude,
Right.
you know? So
Right.
um, it was in piece and parcel like a shift, but it still, you know, I still had that identity. I still had that self-identity that would come back to me, you know, when I wasn't on my cloud nine of raw food vibes, you know, which if I did come up and down, it is always a dance, you know, but
Right.
it was definitely, to an extent, like jumping into the deep end of a pool and then all of a sudden realizing I need to come back up for air, and then finding myself in the shallow end and then in the deep end and then on the side of the pool again. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it was kind of my path, I guess, my little dance from, you know, from
Right.
being on the side of the pool and being baking in the sun to being in the deep end and out again.
Right. Okay, and I think that that's actually a perfect answer, and I'm so glad that you answered it that way, because it's so true that, like, I think a lot of us have this expectation of this overnight transformation, or like you said, this like slope of I'm going to go from where I am to where I'm headed, and it's just going to be this like continual journey, right?
Yeah.
When reality is not like that at all. That, like
No.
you say, it's a dance. We go in and out, we go up and down, we go down and up, right? And that is really what's happening. It's like it's you get that new level of awareness, you kind of integrate it, and then you maybe go back a little bit, and then you go forward, and then we're learning in like this spiral motion rather than learning in this
Absolutely.
straight. So how have you learned to embrace yourself, knowing that the journey is this dance, rather and have you been able to, or how have you been able to let go of this idea that it should be this straight line, and I can only love myself when I'm on this straight line?
Well, you know, I think just like the question itself, it was a dance, you know, and I mean, I use that dance metaphor often. I use it in my coaching a lot, and you know, in the beginning, I was really attached, you know, and while it's not, you know, totally coinciding with exactly what we're talking about, um, you know, when I first got into raw food, to me it seemed like raw food was the answer. It was the cure-all. It was the panacea, you know, and it was like, as long as I can be perfect with my diet, everything else
Right.
is going to be perfect, you know? And so
Right.
I put a lot of stress on that. You know, I put a lot of mental anguish on that, to the degree where, you know, how I said I had my self-identity with skateboarding and I was a good person, or I was really happy with life and boisterous if I was skateboarding good. I had the same kind of thing with raw food, where it was like, if I'm doing perfect with my diet, I'm a good raw foodist and I'm on my path. And if I fell off of that, or if I fell off of, you know, my mental state, if I started feeling down or confused or non-accepting of what the present moment was, then everything went haywire, you know. And like, you know, when I did fall off the wagon, you know, the first time, and I say fall off the wagon because, you know, at that point I believed again in the black white success failure mindset.
Right.
I was a failure and I hated myself. I literally did. I went from being like, you know, really light, you know, really in gratitude, to completely in despair and anger and hate, you know, when I fell off of the lifestyle, fell off of the diet. And,
Mhm.
you know, that was part of my path, and that was part of my awareness growing, because in, you know, future falls off of the wagon, I came to realize that it's always a choice, you know, that it doesn't just happen to you, and that what I do doesn't dictate my state of being any more than I personally allow it.
Right.
And so that was, to me, was the big shift in awareness around raw food, which basically also permeated my spiritual self, was that no matter what I'm doing, no matter what I'm thinking, no matter what I'm needing, no matter what I'm utilizing in my present physical awareness or experience, it cannot overshadow, it cannot infiltrate the truth of my being, So
Right.
that's really what shifted me, was that awareness, because once I really knew and accepted that, once I really 100% took that on, it
Hmm.
didn't matter if I felt like being a monk, which I've had years where, I used, well, maybe not years, but over a year period where I was really like in that, like the no fap, and like I'm not here to be a sexual being. I'm here to be a spiritual being. I'm here to,
Right.
just radiate, Mr. Rogers' love, and that's it, and
Right.
that was perfect, and that met me 100% where I was in that moment, and that was a beautiful time in my life. But when that shifted
Hmm.
and I came more into a physical reality and I wanted to dance with life and suck it all up and lick it too, then I felt
Yeah.
great about that as well, and I don't think there's anything in this
Yeah.
life to be ashamed of or to be scared of or to feel guilty about. Um,
Right.
and, I think, again, that was just all facilitated by my awareness that grew through the shame and guilt I felt around raw food and the awakening to my
Right.
spiritual self through that.
Right. Right. That's amazing. So, and I think what I hear you saying there is that, I think it's really important that a take home message from this kind of interview that we're doing here is that, the raw foods is not the thing. It's not
No.
about being a perfect raw foodist. It's not about, right, never eating cooked food and hating yourself if you do, because really,
Yeah.
when we do that, right, when we do that, are we really taking the steps towards health that we think we're taking, or are we
Yeah.
just creating a new addiction for ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
And that
And I mean,
it,
unless that's a
yeah,
part of your journey, right? But the beautiful thing about what we are doing here is we're giving the opportunity to raise awareness before having to step on your own foot with it. Like, I mean, I stepped on myself to come to those understandings, but if you're listening to this right now, you might see it before you're actually like stepping
mm-hmm,
on your own foot again and again and again, because we are pretty slow learners, but if our
yeah,
hearts and minds are open, we can, learn and grow through others' experience rather than needing to experience it ourselves a dozen times.
exactly, exactly. So how would you encourage someone to frame taking on a raw foods diet in a way that you feel is kind of more healthy mentally than like I got to be on the raw foods diet to like raise my consciousness, and if I don't do it perfect, I fucked it up and I'll never be enlightened or whatever.
Well, I love it. I mean, honestly, I would say have fun with it, experiment with
Mm-hmm.
it. See it as a grand experiment and a play date. With yourself. With awareness, with different flavors and
Mm-hmm.
textures, and understand that you can throw it aside at any time. It's not like
Right.
raw for life forever. Here we go. Like throw out all the ovens and microwaves in the world. They're always going to be there. They're gonna be there. Like at least for for a good while here. So the way I would recommend people to take it on is with a heavy dose of laughter and enjoyment, and um, with enjoyment being the focus, with play being the focus, with choosing the foods and the recipes that light you up, that make you say, "Wow, that looks like something I want to experience." And that doesn't mean necessarily that it can't be met with challenge. Because some people, they like to really be met with a challenge, and if that's you, honor that and be like, you know what, I want to really do this like for a month. I'm going to really do it. And it might be hard at some moments, but I'm going to equip myself with the foods and the recipes that seem the most enjoyable to me, right? But if we see it as a fun challenge rather than like an ominous one, we're setting
Right.
ourselves up for a lot more ease and for success than if we're like, all or nothing, black or white, success or failure, which, hey, it worked for
Right.
me, I'll be honest, but it was
Mm-hmm.
a lot more bumpy and a lot more, wild of a dance than I would necessarily recommend others to go on.
Right. And I think too that like really what it still brought you to this place that you're in now, that like sure you eat 100% now, but it's coming from a very different place, right? You're
Yeah,
doing it not because you're not good if you don't. You're doing it because
absolutely,
you respect, right? You respect yourself and this is what feels good to you, which are two very
absolutely.
different places to be, right?
Mhm.
And I
No,
think
absolutely,
that
100%.
right? And one of the messages that I really like to get across here too is like not to say that like everyone should be on a raw food diet or anything like that, but just to really honor the idea of a transition, right?
Hmm.
That it's going to be a journey, and that it's not about getting from here to this thing that you think is perfect right now, right here today. And you may never get to that thing that you think is perfect because maybe that thing isn't actually even perfect for you. And just
Yeah,
to allow this ride to happen and to make room for the journey of it versus
yeah,
having it be like I'm not going to be perfect until I'm there, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just a fragmentation of reality. It's like a setting yourself apart from what is, and um, I heard you say like you shouldn't or you should, right? I mean, and I think that's the most perfect point. It's like there is no should, there is no shouldn't. It's what do you want to
Exactly.
do, and
Right.
that what you want is fluid based on your mind state, and the more you grow with mindfulness, with meditation, with clearing your body out, the more streamlined and focused your want is. And the more streamlined and
Right.
focused your want is, the more steady you are on your path. But as you're growing with that, your want shifts with every single, thought and should and shouldn't through your mind, right? So that's why the dance comes up. But the
Right.
more aware you are of it, the more compassionate you are of yourself, the more considerate you are of the present moment and your shifting needs, the more stable things get and the easier it gets.
Right, right. And I think that you really touched on a really beautiful thing there too, is this kind of idea of these contrasting desires, right? Like the
Yeah,
part of you that really wants to be healthy and really wants to feel good and really wants to nourish yourself, and the part of you that kind of wants to self-sabotage and wants to
yeah,
numb out and wants to do these other things. And I think what you're saying here is just really beautiful in that, like, embrace both of these things. Embrace both
absolutely.
of these. Don't reject either of them. Get curious about both of them and make room for
Mm.
both of them because it is this unification of what is
Yeah,
going on within you that starts to make the path feel less chaotic, right?
yeah.
That
You're in the center
you
spoke of the wheel, as they say.
exactly
Because
beautiful,
I mean, a self-actualized, unified being isn't just pure light. It is just a unified shadow and light body that is more consciously aware of their choices. And when they choose something, it's for their betterment. It's for their actual want. It's for the experience that is coming out of it. And I mean, I really do think one of the most profound realizations I had in my journey was that no matter what I chose, it was totally okay, and it was part of my journey. It was great. It was perfect, and coming back to that gratitude awareness that this is exactly what I need to experience right now in order to gain the clarity and in order to experience fully what my spirit is calling for, to see love and let it go. Because if we
right?
have that dark shadow self, or we have that cobweb within us, or we have that experience that we judged in the past and thought was evil and bad and we shouldn't be expecting or shouldn't be experiencing anymore, when instead we choose to love and accept it, we choose to allow ourselves to experience it, we fully experience it. And that was like the earth-shattering moment in my cooked food addiction. Was this isn't a bad thing. If I accept myself, if I love myself, if I allow myself to experience this, if I create a present moment awareness meditation of it, and whether that's
Yeah.
food or whether that's an emotion or whether that's a behavior or whether that's a thought, whatever it is, if you
Hmm.
experience it because you're loving it, because you're allowing yourself to be that in the moment, you can let go of it. It's just that rejection, that judgment of it, that keeps it kind of yo-yoing back and forth. Because it's like, no, 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 can't experience that. That's bad. I shouldn't be doing that. And it's like, okay, well, we'll only experience this much of that totality, and it'll
Right.
come back and hit you again twice as hard. But the love and acceptance of it allows you to see it, to feel it, and then from there to choose to let it go. Because it is a choosing. You know, it's like once you really be it and experience it, you can choose. But if you don't see and be it, then it just hits you in the back of the head like a boomerang.
Right, right. And so I think what I hear you saying there is that it's really being in this state of allowing that paradoxically gives you all your power back. We think that being in resistance is what's giving us our power, when really it's that being in that allowing and being in the experience where we allow ourselves to actually take in all the information that experience is trying to give us. That's where our power lies.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right? And that's so beautiful. Yep. Okay, so last question before I let you go. What does gratitude mean to you? Because you have talked a lot about gratitude, and I think that it's a beautiful concept. And maybe we can unpack it a little bit because I think that we hear, often we hear these words and these catchphrases like self-love and gratitude and passion. But what does gratitude really mean? What is that? If we're going to unpack that a little bit so that we can say, this is what gratitude means to me. When I'm in a state of gratitude, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, this is where I'm vibrating. What does that mean for you?
Yeah. Gratitude to me is a sense of awareness or a sense of being where your heart feels so expanded that tears come to your eyes for happiness. You know, when you're sitting in creation and you just think I can't believe I ever had a thought against this. I can't believe I ever had a moment where my vision was so closed that I thought I knew everything. You know, where my heart was so closed that I thought that I didn't have love to give or something more to experience. You know, gratitude is complete expansion. You know, it's a sense, an overwhelming sense of happiness, of allowing goodness to be within you. You know, and I think overwhelming is a good explanation for it, and you know, even indescribable is a good explanation for it. You know, and it's like, for me, when I'm really in gratitude awareness, it is like that near crying state of just just being so overwhelmingly happy and joyful that I can't wipe the smile off my face, you know, and I don't mind if there's tears rolling down my cheek.
Yeah. And that you can make the choice to be in that state.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Gratitude.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily something that happens to you because something beautiful happened to you. Right? It's that you can choose to bring that to everything and see that everything is something beautiful that is happening to you.
Yeah, I think more than anything, it's a slowing down. You know, it's like a choosing to come into this present moment. I think present moment awareness is gratitude. You know, I think we get so tied up in our mind and in doing that we forget to be, which the true state of being is gratitude and bliss. You know, but there's so many things that come between us and our bliss. You know, and most of them are of our own construct, you know, of our own thought pattern, of our own dissemination of what we should be thinking or feeling or what we should be experiencing. And when we cut through all of that, when we cut through all the chatter, there's gratitude. You know, it's only a breath, it's only a moment away, but it can feel like forever away in some moments. You know, and it all comes back to that acceptance of the dance. You know, because I think if we're in gratitude, we're in that enlightened state, you know? So often people think enlightenment is a forever state that you achieve and just boom, you're in enlightenment forever. But to me, at least, it's a habitual coming back to that present moment awareness of gratitude, of bliss, of being, you know? And it is attainable for all of us, how long we sit in it and how long we decide to deviate from it. At sometimes feels like it's up to us, and other times it feels like it's totally separate. But we always have that awareness and that ability to come back to it whenever we choose.
That's so beautiful. That's such a lovely kind of ending note, but I want to give you, if you have anything else that you'd like to say, like a message to everyone who's raw curious or looking to be on a raw food diet or feeling discouraged on their path, what would you have to say to them?
Love it all. I mean, that's really it. Love it all. Choose to experience it all. And whether you're laughing through it, crying through it, screaming through it, or shaking through it, allow yourself to be that. I can recall in my journey many times where I've been incredibly frustrated or incredibly sad, and people around me have been trying to, say like, hey, feel this, or you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, I just want to experience what I'm experiencing, there's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with it. We all go through it. This is the human experience, and we are here to have a human experience. Honor that, love that, and through that we'll gain more awareness, we'll gain more clarity. And
Yeah.
I think it's only going to bring us to a state of more constant balance, so the more self-love we can experience, the more we can choose to grow through our experiences and experiment with play and with fun, the flavors, tastes, textures, and emotions that arise from delving into a more high vibrational raw food or plant-based lifestyle. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Choose to see it with that gratitude if you can. Breathe into it, and if not, shake until you do.
Amazing. So good. All right. So where can people find you? Do you have anything coming up? Anything you want to tell people about? Yeah, let us know all of that stuff. And I'll put links to everything down below, but just so that you can tell people.
Awesome. Thanks so much. The Raw Advantage is my main aim. TheRawAdvantage.com, The Raw Advantage on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever it may be. I'm very social media active, sharing everything I am as much as I can. On my website, The Raw Advantage, I do by donation consultations. I put up weekly videos, recipes, recipe books. My 501c3 charity, the TRA Dream, is a growing mission to create donation-based healing, permaculture, raw food, yoga centers around the world, and that dream is growing. And I, hope that to be my legacy. I aim that to be my legacy I leave behind. So everything The Raw Advantage. That's it.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for being here, Chris, and thank you so much for all of your amazing insights and for sharing your journey and for exploring all of this with me today. And lastly, I will say that, I really wanted to have you on because I feel like this is a side of you that is less explored than some of the other aspects of you. But for sure, if you're out there looking for really, really amazing raw food recipes, Chris is the place to go. I have all of his books and all of his recipes. So good. So just if you were into this conversation but you're like kind of also like, but I want to try some cool fun recipes, Chris is the place to go. So that's awesome.
Bless you, Ali. That's so kind of you to say.
Yes. So thank
you
you so much. And connect with Chris. Find all of his information down below. Watch his videos. They're really entertaining and fun and very lighthearted. And then come meet him at Woodstock Fruit Festival, which is happening, and all the other things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Find that on his website. And thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Sounds great. Much love.
Bye.